Thank you very, very much. Hi, I'm Ivan. It's been over 40 years since my last cold call.
I love it.
By the way, I used to, before I started BNI, I was a management consultant. I trained companies on how to do cold calls. I was pretty good at it. I did so much of it, I decided I never wanted to do it again. Does it work? Yeah, maybe, but is it fun? It wasn't for me, that's for sure. I want to just take a moment, and I don't know if Mary is in the room. I don't see her. We have a new CEO who's been with us now for a number of months. She's doing a great job. I love working with Mary. We also have a new chief marketing officer, Heather, who I know is in the room. And you'll stand up and wave. You're in marketing. And we just met today, and I'm really looking forward to working with her as well. I want to thank the sponsors. You know, sponsors reduce the cost of any event. So if you haven't walked by, you'll have time, walk by their tables and just check out their material, because they do bring down the cost of an event, and it's a simple thing to walk by and ask, look at their material. So this is an Ask the Founder event, and some people like to call it Ivan Unplugged, although I have a microphone. So I really don't know what I'm going to talk about, except for about 5 minutes or less worth of material. So I've got just a little bit of material that I want to share, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. The only dumb question is the unasked question. So whatever's on your mind is okay with me. You can ask a question about BNI. You can ask a question about scaling a business. You can ask, if you have a personal question, I'm happy to answer personal questions. Whatever is, I see a couple people go, personal question. Sure, I don't care. I may not answer it, but you can ask. So I do have just a couple of things that I want to talk about, and then it's up to you as to what I'm going to talk about. I want to refer you to a few podcasts, which I think are really, really important for the growth and health of a BNI chapter. The first podcast that I want to refer you to is podcast number 921. 921. I don't recall the name of it, but there are two graphs on there that are really, really important data. So I know this isn't going to be the fun part, because I'm going to be talking about data. Data. I had, when I was at university, I had a stats professor who said, if you torture the data long enough, it'll confess to anything. So I just want to assure you, this data has not been tortured. Okay, this is torture-free data. But look at 921. This is actually, I believe both of these were done by outside firms, and were done a number of years ago, and I wanted to put them together into one podcast. There's two graphs in there that are amazing. The first is the amount of business that's generated by the length of years in a chapter. And the graph goes like this. So that when people in their first year, not a lot. But in their second year, third year, fourth year, seventh year, it's substantial. And the second graph in that podcast is member revenue by chapter size. And the member revenue by chapter size, and some of this is kind of old data, but it is chapters of less than 20. It is more than, it's about 5 to 10 times larger if the chapter is 70. So the point is that as a chapter grows, you increase referrals not arithmetically, but almost exponentially. So larger chapters just generate way more referrals. As a matter of fact, we've found over the years that when a chapter doubles its size, it tends to triple the referrals that it generates. And I'm going to refer you to another podcast number 824. Podcast number 824. And 824 was data from quite a few years ago, where a chapter came to me and said, we don't believe that absences make a difference in the amount of business that's generated. We would like to show you that it doesn't make a difference. So we're going to reduce our absenteeism and track the number of members in the chapter and how much business we generate from the chapter. And I don't remember the first group, but I remember the data on the second group. But the first group did well. They God bless them, they dropped close to 50% of absenteeism. And their membership went up something like 60%, and the referrals went up like 60 or 70%. And they did that for 6 months. And I got a phone call from another chapter. This is back in the late 90s, okay? But this pattern holds true today. Late 90s, chapter calls me up and said, we don't believe what you put in the newsletter. We think you made it up. I'm like, really? Just call the president and ask him. And he said, oh, the president's probably in your pocket. He'll do whatever you want. I'm like, man, you don't know this organization. If people would own, sometimes people say this is such a cult. If this were a cult, everyone would do what I tell them to do. And they don't. I tried. They don't. So I said, no, call him. He'll tell you the truth. And he said, look, we want to do the same thing they did. But instead for 6 months, we want to do it for a year. Are you okay with that? I'm like, yeah. And will you publish whatever our results are? I said, absolutely, I'll publish it. And will you take it to the Board of Advisors? Because it's the members created the policy on attendance. Not me, not Ivan. You guys did. Well, the International Board of Advisors, members, created that policy. So I said, yeah, I'll take it to them and I'll show them the data. So here's what, at 9 months, their absenteeism dropped by 50%, 53%, I think it was. Their membership went up by 90%. And their referrals went up by 164%. Absenteeism affects membership. More importantly, it affects referrals. Take a look at that podcast number 824, and another podcast that shows similar data. It's newer data, but it's really consistent. It shows how when chapters have absenteeism of less, well, take a look at the graph. As the absenteeism goes down, or as the absenteeism reduces, the amount of business generated goes up substantially. So take a look at episode number 808. 808. Both of those podcasts will talk about closed businesses and absences. Okay, that's my speech. I'm done. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about next because you will get to pick whatever topic it is that you would like. And we talked about a topic earlier. Go ahead. Yeah, ask your question.
Oh, gosh. Yes, so I like personal questions, but, okay. So I was just wondering, what really inspired you to start BNI and what's the story behind it?
Yeah, look, I would like to tell you, this is a long answer.
Okay, short story long, long story short,
I would like to tell you that I had this vision for an international organization. By the way, the data is substantially different. We're at 11,504 chapters, I think, as of this morning. 11,504 chapters, 347,000 members worldwide, and 32 books, just. Talk to Dana, she'll make sure you get it. So, look, I'd like to tell you I had this vision of an international organization, but the truth is I needed referrals for my consulting practice, and I wanted to help my friends. I had friends that I knew needed referrals. I needed referrals. We got together on January. We actually got together, a lot of people I don't tell this to a lot of people, we actually got together in December of '84. And I said, I got this idea, would you guys like to do this? And they're like, yeah, we're all in. And so January 8th, 1985, we literally did the kickoff between early December, through Christmas, and kicked off on January 8th, 1985. And so it was going well. And I was getting referrals, and I was able to give referrals. Someone came who couldn't join because of a conflict in classification. And she said, this is incredible. I could get a ton of business out of a group like this. Would you help me open up my own chapter? And I said, no, this isn't what I do. I'm a business consultant. I don't run a network. And she said, well, this is kind of consulting. You're helping me build my business. I'm like, it's a stretch, but okay. And so I opened a second chapter, and 2 people came to that second chapter who couldn't join because of a classification conflict with other people, and both of them said, wow, this is great. I could get a ton of business, but I can't join because the classification is represented. Would you help us open up 2 more groups? And I said, no, this isn't what I do. And so, as you might guess, it kept happening. And at the end, and by December, we had 20 chapters without me trying. In 1 year. I opened 20 chapters in 1 year. So for the staff that are here and dealing with launch directors, it's possible to open more than 2 chapters in a year. I did 20 by myself, no assistants, assistant directors or director consultants in just 1 year. And at the end of that year, between Christmas and New Year's, I always take time off to assess. And the first thing I thought was, what the heck just happened? This wasn't part of my plan. And when I realized that we don't teach people this in colleges and universities, we don't teach them how to network, we don't teach them anything about referral marketing. And that's when I had what I call my Brody moment. My Brody moment. Okay, remember the movie Jaws? Okay, and in Jaws, you really don't see the shark until the very end of the movie. And all of a sudden Jaws comes out of the water and Sheriff Brody sees the shark for the first time, and he turns to the captain and he says, "You're gonna need a bigger boat." And so that was December of '85 was my Brody moment, where I'm like, I'm gonna need a bigger boat. This is gonna be way larger than I anticipated. And that, actually, at the end of '85, December, I started to write a plan to scale the business. At that time, I was thinking national. A little later came international. But that's the story about BNI got started, and now we have 11,504 chapters. The founding chapter, by the way, is still in existence.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, chapter number 1 in Arcadia, California.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is even cooler. One of the founding members is in that chapter.
Okay.
Still.
Wow.
And another founding member is in another chapter. So we have 2 of the founding members. Now, technically, it's their children, but it's the same company that are still in BNI. We have 1 member who has been a member, individual member, for 39 years. That's our Stephen Marche. Yeah, there's a podcast I do on Stephen. Great question, thank you. Yes, sir. Yeah, sure.
Dr. Misner, I probably don't need this. When people speak your name 100 years from now, what do you most hope they say you stood for?
You stood for?
Stood up. What I stood up for. Well, I wrote a. You might be surprised. I wrote a book on that topic. It's called Infinite Legacy.
Okay.
It's a real short book. It's an easy read. You can do it in 2 hours. And it talks about the legacy that we leave in life. And legacy is, it's not just money. It's the way you live your life, and that's really the bottom line. It's how you live your life. Your legacy is how you live your life, and it's how you impact other people. We all have people that are in our story, right? I can tell stories about teachers that made a difference in my life, my parents and how they made a positive difference in my life. We all have people that we can tell stories about, and how they changed us in some way. But you know what? That's not as important as something else. There's something more important than that. What's more important is, whose story are you in? That's actually more important, because it means you've made a difference to someone. In some way, you've made a difference. It could be one act of kindness, or it could be a whole series of lifetime events where you've made a difference in that person's life. So to me, it's about making a difference, a positive difference, because we all make a difference. It's not all positive. So it's what's the positive difference then that we make in life? There's an important quote that I have in that book from Jean-Paul Sartre. And I first read this in high school, and it's in the book. And it will tell you my philosophy of life and legacy. Sartre said, we all die too soon or too late, and yet our life is complete at that moment, with a line drawn neatly under it, ready for the summing up. You are your deeds in life, and little more. And so, to me, that's the legacy is. Did I help other people? Did I impact them? in someone else's story.
I have 5 of your books. What's the name of that book?
That one is Infinite Legacy.
Infinite.
Infinite Legacy. It's a short. By the way, he has 5 of my books. I have the 32nd book, by the way, just came out 2 weeks ago. It's called Networking is a Marathon, Not a Sprint. Just came out, already top 10 bestseller in sales on Amazon. Networking is a marathon, not a sprint. But I think that's it. It's how you treat people. And you know, are you in their story in some way? Have you made a difference, a positive difference in their life? By the way, there's a lot of people that have made a negative difference in your life. Use that as juice to make a positive difference. I have people in my story that said horrible, negative things to me. And first of all, I'd walk out of the room and go, okay, that's a life lesson. I'll never say that to anyone, ever. And then if, you take that negative and you make it a positive. So I got people who have done horrible things that I turn into a positive. So what you need to think about is what positive things, because people remember those negative, but they live by those positive. Yeah, Scott.
Yes, Dr. Misner, wonderful to meet you, sir. I'm very loud,
Okay.
so I've never needed a microphone in my entire life. So I have a really quick, I hope you find humorous story.
Okay.
And then I
Well,
have
these are questions, not
Then I have a
stories.
very serious thing for you, okay?
It's got to be a short
So,
story.
okay, very short. Our chapter recently had a murder mystery event at one of our members' homes. Can you guess who the victim was?
Oh God, was it really me?
It was you.
That's funny.
It was you, yes. So that's the quick funny story.
All right, that was quick, and that was funny.
Thank you. My serious question is, I have a nonprofit. 2026 will be 20 years we've had our nonprofit. Planet Improv Incorporated, empowering resilience in students through creativity. So you don't have to answer this question right now. Miss Corey, Mr. Brenton, any other, and I don't mean this in a bad way, of Dr. Miser's underlings. I want to know somebody in this organization of the hundreds of thousands that you mentioned who has really, because you guys have obviously emphasized getting nonprofits in the organization.
We have.
All right. So I want to know somebody who's doing it great that I can talk to. Hear me, Mr. Brenton? Wherever you are, Miss Corey, back there, up there. Again, you don't have to answer the question right now, but I would love to have a moment of their time, a one-to-one with them, to see what I can do to make my nonprofit better and utilize this huge network that we have. I don't want to look at everybody as an ATM because people hate that with nonprofits.
Right.
But I've listened to the podcasts about it. I've listened to them multiple times.
You listen to podcasts.
Multiple times, yes,
I
sir.
did one podcast with somebody who was in a
Right.
Okay.
So anybody knows anybody on the radar for that? I won't leave right after the message. I'll be looking for you, my friend. Thank you for coming to visit us, my friend. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right. Yes.
Excellent evening. Thank you so much for being here. I had 2 quick questions. One was, you launched the 20 chapters, those first 20 chapters.
I did.
So what was the initial investment for them? And 2, and you don't maybe not have to answer this right now, maybe after. Do you have any advice for me as a launch coach?
Yeah, well, the initial investment in 1985 was a lot less than it is today. But you also have to remember, we had nothing.
Right.
When I say nothing, I mean nothing. There were no manuals, no marketing materials. It was 1985. There was no internet, so there was no website. We literally had no brochures, no visitor information sheets. There was no leadership team training. So the initial cost was somewhere under $300. But we also did dues and we had monthly dues, which was a huge mistake. Huge mistake, because people would be in for 2-3 months and that's not working for me, and quit. So the International Board of Advisors said, well, we have to drop monthly dues. And so that was one of the mistakes we made early on. But literally all we had in 1985 was one sheet of paper. It was the agenda typed up by me on an IBM Selectric typewriter.
Yeah.
Okay? Some people might know what that is. Today it's a boat anchor. But back then I typed Columbus style, seek out and discover. Right? And so, I wrote the agenda. That's the only material that we have. Now we're working on an AI version of Q&A. I don't know if I've got the name right. Integrated. What's a little integrated? What's that? Integrated something. Integrated virtual advisor navigator.
Oh my God.
That's right. That was not my idea, but they did ask. They did ask if it was okay. So I said, yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have where members can get on and say, how do I invite people? Or what's a great size chapter? What should we be working for? And you get these answers because they mine BNI podcast for all the data that's there and my blog and all the content that BNI has. And so this virtual advisor will be able to help members. I used it recently for a sedan service, a car service, where he wanted to know what would be his power team, and he asked me, what would be a good power team? And I'm like, I don't know. And so I got on ChatGPT before we had the virtual advisor, which is coming up. And I asked, and it gave me a great list. It knew what power teams were, it knew what contact spheres were, and it gave me a great list, and a list that he was like, my goodness, I never thought about those professions. So, I don't know, did I answer your question? Oh, yeah, so that was what it cost. What do I recommend for launches? 2 or 3 things. One, don't mess with the system. It's a quote from a book I haven't published yet. The Curse of Complexity. The Curse of Complexity. We just keep wanting to mess with stuff.
Exactly.
Stop
Job
it.
security for the young people.
It is, but it isn't actually job security for the young people because you can really screw up a system. Right? I mean, just think of your television remote control. You now need like 2 or 3 or 4 because they keep adding stuff, right? They're going to put their Gregorian calendar on there eventually because, there's a little space available. So follow the system and look for people who are passionate, just passionate about the idea. And what you want to do is you want to take them to a great chapter, okay, and let them see a great chapter. And they'll walk out going, wow, that's amazing. And so you get that core group, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to go see these great chapters. And when they get that, then it's easier for them to become passionate. I remember in the early days thinking, I'd rather have somebody who's ignorance on fire than knowledge on ice. Meaning, I'd rather have I was the poster child for ignorance on fire. I loved this concept. I didn't know what I was doing. I was making it up as I went. I wrote the 1-page agenda. And then I, figured out training, and I was learning all of this and writing it all down. I was the poster child for ignorance on fire. Or you can get somebody who's knowledge on ice, and they're like, yeah, I'm kind of interested in this. I'll think about joining. Now, I'm not going to bring any people to the core group meetings. Then, cut them loose. You want people that are on fire. Now, if you get somebody who understands networking, like maybe someone from another BNI chapter that's moved and they're now here and they understand it, you might get knowledge on fire, which is great. But I'd rather have ignorance on fire any day of the week because you can train them. We have so much content to train people. We can train them how to network, which we didn't have back in 1985. Didn't have any books on networking. I wrote the first book on networking. First book, I think, sold 20 copies. Really didn't sell very many. But look for passion. People that are really passionate.
We got a question back here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, Dr. Miser. My name is Antonio Knox. My question is, which is my 4th year been in BNI, which it has been amazing for me. And I'm at the point where I actually just reached out a couple of weeks ago to get my first board of advisors, in which I'm scaling. It's scary. I had to do it, I just kind of feel it. And you alluded to when you say you launched the first 20 chapters. My question to you is when you got to that level where you was like, wow, this thing is huge, because you can feel all of the activity that you had generated before. What are some tips in terms of scaling responsibly and things that you want to make sure that you have just so that you can be able to take advantage of everything you already did responsibly?
So I'm literally working on a book with Graham Weimler, who's the past CEO of BNI, called Garage to Global. How do you take your business from your garage and turn it into a global enterprise? So far, I mean, my average book is about 50,000 words. So far, we're not done. We have 100,000 words. So I could spend a couple days answering that question. Let me give you one or two thoughts that I think are really important. One is the ignorance on fire. When you're a small business, you can't afford knowledge on fire. But as you get larger and more successful and have a greater income, you can hire knowledge on fire. So ignorance on fire. The second thing is write everything down. Write everything down. Write what works down. Write what doesn't work down. Don't just train people on what to do. Train them on what not to do. Because they need to understand you've done that already. It didn't work. Don't do it again. So you write everything down. I'll give you one more. Delegation. Small businesses really struggle with delegating. Okay, so they understand it conceptually. They don't know how to do it. So I didn't learn this in graduate school. I don't know why they don't teach this in graduate school. What you have to do to delegate is you have to delegate both responsibility and authority. Both. Okay? We delegate responsibility. This is your job. You don't do it right, then you get in trouble. But you don't give any authority to them. And so what you do is you delegate both responsibility and the authority to make decisions. Now, a new employee, you can't give 100% authority, right? So you give them 50% authority. You say, here are your boundaries. You can make a decision anywhere within this 50% choices, right? Anything else, go to your supervisor, or you'll probably be the supervisor. Come to see me on anything else. And then over time, you give them 60% authority, and 70% authority, and 80, and 90. I would argue maybe even 95% authority. I never gave anyone 100% authority. I always held back two things. One, a dollar amount, which varied depending on the position. So the receptionist had $100. Just buy it. Whatever you need, just buy it. Up to $100. Then you gotta talk to your supervisor. The CEO, or Norm, who's the national director CEO, had, I think it was $10,000. So just do it. Anything over that, you gotta come see me. And so you delegate responsibility and you delegate up to 95% authority. And when you do that, you've delegated effectively. And for a while, you're gonna be thinking, it's taking me more time to teach this person than if I just did it myself. Yes, it is. And you'll never scale. You will never be able to scale your business unless you spend the time teaching someone how and then giving them the authority to make a decision. And don't worry about whether they will screw up or not. They will. It's inevitable. What you want to determine is, did they make an honest mistake, or was it carelessness? Did they do something on purpose? Those are two different reasons. The people that were careless, I fired. The people where it was a learning lesson, I kept. Great question. I hope that answers it. Yes.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, her take it.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Anissa Fleming, who doesn't know me yet. So my question is, and I hope this helps other people, if you are a unicorn or a commoner in the group, so either you have a service that's not popular or you have a service that's very popular, how do you utilize BNI to the best of your advantage in that situation?
By unicorn, you mean an unusual profession?
Yes.
I heard someone say two different answers. I don't think they are. I think it's the same answer for both. The answer is educate, educate, educate. You educate the members on how to refer you. So what happens is people just stand up and they just say, today I'm going to talk about, here's the worst thing to do. I am a full service fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that you need, I can handle any of these kinds of things. And that's a waste of breath, because they already know basically that you're a full service whatever. So what you want to do, and I've got lots and lots of podcasts on this, just do a search on weekly presentation or 60-second presentation, because before about 10 years ago, we changed it from 60-second to weekly because our groups were getting so big, not all groups had 60 seconds. So, good problem to have. So, so do a search on 60-second and weekly presentations. Here's the bottom line. Specific is terrific if you want to get referrals. So you got to get granular. I mean really granular on what it is that you do. A specific product, a specific benefit of a product or a service. One of the best weekly presentations I ever heard was a florist. And florists are notorious for, I'm a full service florist, like whatever you need I can do. Well, this florist came in one week and he held up a single rose. A single rose, okay? And now the rose was wrapped in cellophane. I remember this was in Tennessee, it was a chapter meeting. It was wrapped in cellophane and it had a grocery store sticker on it. And he said, what do you guys think of this rose? And nobody would say anything because they knew it was from the Winn-Dixie grocery store that was right next to the place, right? And so he said, look, Winn-Dixie, they do a pretty good job on their roses. This is their rose. And he took the cellophane off, right? And he held up the rose. He said, well, let me show you my rose. And he reached into the table and he pulled out this long stem rose. I mean, the Winn-Dixie rose was like maybe that big. His rose was at least this, that tall. And the Winn-Dixie rose had a little rose on it. His rose, giant rose in the top. And he said, I want you to look at the stem of my rose. And the stem of his rose was almost as thick as a pencil. And he said, a stem like this will, first of all, give you a bigger rose, and it will draw more water up in, and the rose will live up to a week longer than a rose like this. And he said, here's my rose. And he held it up and he waved it back and forth. He said, here's the Winn-Dixie rose. He went like this, things flopping back and forth. He said, there's only 3 cents difference in price.
Wow.
Theirs is more. I was in that room going, yes! That is a weekly presentation. He talked about a rose, but it wasn't just the rose. It was mostly the stem of a rose and why his roses are better. And I'm telling you, everyone in that room is like, I'm an idiot if I buy my roses at the grocery store. The perceived value is so much greater for his roses. So that's how you rock it, whether you're a unicorn or a common profession. You got to get granular so that people, so you can pierce their reticular activating system. Yeah. Okay, that reticular activating system is that thing that screens out all the stuff that you don't need to know, right? Like I used to be able to sleep through anything. I mean, I could sleep through anything. There was once an automobile accident right in front of my house. It almost hit my front door. I slept through it. I walked out in the morning and there's police tape across right by my front door. And so the police asked the neighbors, my neighbors heard it. They came out and they said, is the owner here? Well, he travels a lot, he might not be here. And I didn't hear any of it, slept right through it. A couple years later, I had my first child. My wife and I had our first child. And I was really worried because I could sleep through anything. I mean, anything. Well, what if the baby's crying? What if something's wrong? Oh my goodness, what am I going to do? Because now I have a different reticular activating system, right? So middle of the night, all she does is whimper. I wake up. Honey, the baby's crying. Forget about the bad husband. Forget about the bad husband. And it's a reticular activating system. The car didn't come through my front door. I didn't need to know about it. But the baby, I needed to pay attention to. If we can get granular, then you pierce that reticular activating system, and people then hear something about, well, I got to get a dozen roses, for a friend of mine who had, some health issues. Hey, I know a great florist, and let me tell you why you want to use him rather than to go to Winn-Dixie and get their flowers. Get granular. I hope that answers your question. Next question. Yes.
Over here, Doctor. Got one over here, Doctor.
Okay, and then you'll be next. And you know what? You guys call me Ivan. Do you know why I use doctor so much? There's actually a good reason. I trademarked the name. You can't trademark a name unless you add something to it. So I added doctor to the name. Why did I trademark the name? To stop social media people from pretending to be me. If you have a trademark, you can pull them down really fast. Without the trademark, you gotta fight with the social media. It's also really good for the
Credibility.
well, well, maybe, but it also helps if you're married and some guy named Ivan Misner gets on Match.com, which has happened a lot. And when I find out, I go to my wife and say, okay, look, honey, there's an Ivan Misner on Match. It's not me. It's all my photos because you can take them off of Facebook. And then we were able to get them taken down from Match very quickly because of the
Credibility.
Yeah.
Jamie Deal, I'm over here struggling to delegate, and you mentioned that you hold back on two things in that 95%. You said dollar amount, and I'm on the edge of my seat. Yes, just a second. It's okay. I can just have my
Legal.
legal.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I didn't remember that one. But illegal. If somebody starts talking about attorneys, come to me. You know, if there's an attorney issue, come to me, and then I may refer you to another staff person, but I need to find out if they're seriously talking about attorney. Those are the two issues I hold back. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, it's Tim, I think, Dr. Tim. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a quick question. You said follow the system to
Yeah.
be successful. Obviously, you've changed a few things. You mentioned stories of why you changed the system within BNI. If you're starting a business, whatever business you're in, how do you know versus do I just keep following the system, or how do I take feedback to implement new things to make it more efficient?
Well, chiropractic in particular, I'm pretty familiar with chiropractic. Dr. Fab Mancini, he's a friend of mine.
Oh, cool.
So he's the ex-president of Parker Chiropractic. So I know chiropractic schools teach systems. I know there are a lot of programs out there that teach systems for chiropractors behind the desk, systems. Follow those systems. Find one and follow it. I would urge you, don't mess with it. Because somehow someone has figured it out and you've just paid a lot of money for it. And if you start going, yeah, this is all right, but I'm going to tweak this or I'm going to tweak that. I remember one person saying to me, sometimes it's like being members. They start pulling stuff off. It's like they're pulling off a car, right? It's like, do we really need that seat? Yeah, we don't need that seat. Do we need this steering wheel? We don't need this steering wheel. Let's take this out. The wheels, we can get by on 3 wheels. And then the chapter's not running because people are pulling stuff off. Or they're let's put a bighorn thing in the front, and you can't see where you're going, but let's add it because it's cool. And they add things to the chapters. Don't do any of that. So if you're paying for chiropractic and the training, follow a program. If it's not working, talk to the people who trained you before you start messing with the system. Don't mess with the BNI system. If you're paying for BNI, don't pay for BNI Lite. Right? 40 years of experience. Yeah, we have made changes. Almost all the changes we made, there are a couple that I made unanimously early on because I had nobody else to help advise me. But we got to the point where we did experimental programs. And so we would experiment with a new idea with a handful of chapters. And if it worked, we did it. And they were sworn to secrecy, those chapters. And then if it didn't work, we didn't do it. And there are things that are on your agenda right now that were experimental programs. Education coordinator was an experimental program. We didn't need an education coordinator until I started writing books. The first book that I wrote that sold more than 20 copies was 1994. So the education coordinator came in about 1995. And we experimented it because it's like we're taking 5 minutes out of this meeting. Do we really want to do that? Well, after watching the chapters, yeah, we want to do that. Membership committees. I didn't start BNI with membership committees. They're critical. We discovered that. And so we experimented and added it. So yes, there are and have been changes, there will be changes, but there's always data points with us. We have the data to show this change needs to be made. You don't have the data on an individual chapter. You don't have the data. And the data you do have is this. And so don't mess with the system. Does that?
Thank you.
And talk to the people who trained you if there are pieces that aren't working, because they might give you a spin that makes it work. Yes?
We got one right over here.
Oh, God, she was next. She was next.
I'm gonna do what he said. Hi everyone, I'm Krista Ratliff with my Business Accelerator. So this is actually a good segue to the question, so it might work out well, the last question. How did the core values evolve? Because I personally, as a member, get a lot of value out of that, and I've personally, professionally, like in all areas. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the core values didn't happen immediately, other than the Giver's Gain was pretty quick. Within the first year or so, we added Giver's Gain. And I did that because I realized that I didn't want BNI to be transactional like a lot of networks. And so I needed to think of a soundbite that would be easy. I needed to use a soundbite that would be easy to remember. I had no idea it would become such an integrated part of the DNA of the organization when I started to use that phrase, Giver's Gain. And it became a core. It started as our philosophy, and then was one of the first of the core values. I'll tell you how and I've written about this. You can go to my blog, and it's probably on my podcast. The process of writing core values. So just maybe putting core values, or how do you create core values, and it'll pop up. I believe core values start with practices that work. And then they become traditions. Traditions that you talk about. Well, this is how this works, and it works because of this tradition, which is very much Disney oriented. Disney actually trains on traditions. So those traditions become core values, and those core values create culture. And culture eats strategy for breakfast. Culture is the secret sauce to any successful organization. Whether you're talking about all of BNI or your chapter culture will make or break the success of your chapter. And so they evolved over a number of years. We added two, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, but they were always part of the organization, but we just, for some reason, didn't think of them. That was recognition and accountability. From day one, recognition and accountability were part of the traditions, but we didn't have them in the formal core values, and we added them about 11 or 12 years ago. So, core values, gotta live them. It's so important to talk about them regularly. An education coordinator should talk about them. On Business Builder, I have 8 videos on Business Builder. 3 minutes, 4 minutes long on all 7 core values. There's 8 because the first one is, here are our core values, and this is why they're important. And now go watch the next 7, where each one I talk about each core value individually. It's great content. Get your education coordinator to watch those. Get a member to talk about one of their core values that resonates with them and why. Have them watch one of the videos, and then talk about that core value and why it resonates with them. And you keep the core values alive in a chapter. Great question. Yes, sir.
Doctor, I've been blessed to meet a lot of billion-dollar company builders, and you are the one person now. Again, much of a blessing. So one question I have is that all of them have said one thing where they say that they already see the end. That's how they build it. Now, from your story, you're saying you just happened to start with 20. Then when did you really see, and where you see this going, for the next 5 years? That's one part of the question. And second question is, for people like me who were dreaming of building billion-dollar companies, do you think BNI is still one of those places for us to, move over there?
The second question is, yeah. The shortest answer ever. The visionary thing was, I stumbled into it. BNI is a classic example of necessity being the mother of invention. But once I did it, I recognized what was going on. Okay, it's like, what? Wow, this wasn't in my plan. And then that's where it's important to get visionary. Whenever you recognize, somebody can open a door for you, but you got to walk through it. Right? So a door got opened, And I'm like, I need to go through that tour, because that's amazing. So what I did was I spent the next 6 months calculating how many chapters could BNI someday have. Now this is now 1986. I finally did the calculations by June of 1986. Why so long? 1986, there was no Monsieur Google. I had to go to the library and go through population data and try to do calculations on population and how many cities and how many chapters what's the smallest city that a chapter could open. And I calculated in 1986 that someday BNI could have over 10,000 chapters. I came to that conclusion in June of 1986, and I remember talking to a friend of mine then, Bruce, and I said, Bruce, you know this BNI thing I'm doing? He said, yeah. I said, I think it could have 10,000 chapters someday. And he said, and how many chapters do you have now? He said, 30. Because it was June, I had 10 more. I said, 30? And he said, and you think you could have 10,000? I said, absolutely, positively. I believe we can have over 10,000 chapters, and then we have 11,500.
Thank you. Hi there, Evan. I'm Deanna Stoltenberg from BNI Providence chapter. My question to you is, as a part of our membership committee and also BNI ambassador, what would be your best piece of advice for a brand new member?
Well, first and foremost, do member success program training. It's critical. And you know, if you're not a new member, you've got to be nudging the new members to do member success program training, because there are several levers that you can pull that'll make a difference in the retention of your membership in a chapter. One is the size of the chapter, but two, you have a direct and immediate impact on. The first lever is members who go through member success program training within the first, I think it's 60 to 90 days. 60 days. So members, thank you. I remember, I appreciate it. So within the first 60 days, if they go through member success program training, the chances of them renewing their membership go up dramatically. Why? Because they got an orientation. You know, if you've ever gone to work for a company that did not do an orientation, I did, where they said, these are the offices. Here's the men's room. This is your office. The president's out of town for a couple of days. Good luck. That was my orientation. And I'm like, man, I'm never gonna. If I ever run a business, I'm never gonna do an orientation like that. So the orientation is critical, because they can start at least at a jog, if not a full-on run. If they don't get that training, they're stumbling. That's lever number one. Lever number two, and this one I struggled with until me and a few other people wrapped our head around it. If the new member sponsors a new member early on in their membership, within what time? You know, within what time? Do you know that?
60 days.
No, sponsor within 60 days? Really? Sponsor a new member?
Why not?
Why not? Okay. There is. She's correct, but there is a data that shows that if they do it within a certain period of time, and it's early, not late, if it's early, and they sponsor a new member, the chances of them staying on for another year go up dramatically.
Yeah.
Now, I remember looking at that data going, why? Why? And then it hit me, because they brought a friend in. Now they have a friend who's in there with them. And if they sponsored two, they had two friends that are in there with them, and they don't want to leave them. You know, no person left behind, right? I'm not going to leave them. And so they stay. Those are two levers that you can pull immediately to increase retention. You increase retention, you increase the number of members, you increase the number of members, you're going to increase the amount of business dramatically in the chapter. Over time, not overnight, but over time. Okay? Yeah, another question.
My name is Calvin Hill. If someone argued that BNI has limited people's potential as much as it has unlocked it, how would you respond?
BNI is not for you. You know what? I'm not going to argue with people. if they feel like it's limiting their potential, I would say, maybe go visit a really great chapter, and maybe this isn't for you. Some will, some won't, so what? Because if you, listen, I used to be really good at talking people into joining. I used to be really good at it. People would say something like that, and I'd talk them into it, and they joined, and they were a horrible member. I talked them into it, and they were a horrible member because they weren't really committed. And so, BNI is not for everybody. It's a commitment.
Yeah.
Every week. Oh my goodness, every week. By the way, we've tested twice chapters that met not every other week, but twice a month. They're different. And both times, one was just recently, we tested it. Both times, referrals were 50% less in the chapters who met twice a month versus every week. So, we've got a track record, and if they're not willing to make that commitment, this isn't for them.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Last question.
Last question. I got 7 minutes. Let's see how long I answer it.
Thank you. Alex Purdy with Carolina Terrain, Waxhaw chapter. I just wanted to ask, what's the one thing we can do as members to carry your legacy? I did ask you that at the beginning of this, but I wanted to hear kind of what can we do to continue this legacy that you've built? The one thing. Be specific.
Build strong chapters and be a strong member. And I know that sounds like, how's that build anyone's legacy? It builds a legacy because it helps generate business. One of the best ways that a member can do it is to make sure to do a lot of one-to-ones, which may seem like an odd answer, but you do one-to-ones, you're going to get more business. And I've got another, I've got another podcast. Look up a podcast. Look up the name Beatrice, Beatrice. She's the one that did the research in Europe on a region of BNI. And she looked at people who did one-to-ones. And people who did, she compared people who did one-to-one a month, 0 to 1, 2 to 3, whatever. So the people who did about one-to-one a month versus the people who did 4 one-to-ones a month. The people who did 4 gave almost exactly 100% more referrals.
You know how many one-to-ones I've done this month?
All right, hang on, I want to hear it. But here's the second part. The most important thing is they received almost 100% more referrals. And so the best legacy that anyone can leave for BNI, for me, is to be successful. And one of the best ways to be successful is to do one-to-ones. Now, you're going to give me a big number, and I may give you an answer that you will be surprised at. How many one-to-ones have you done?
So I joined 3 weeks ago, and I fully embodied the BNI process. I've done over 20 one-to-ones in the past
Okay.
in the past month, and I've generated over 30 referrals during that time.
All right, that's outstanding. The fact that, we can talk about it. The fact that you've been a member for 3 months,
3 weeks.
3 weeks. I think that's great that you did so many one-to-ones. And remember, networking is a marathon, not a sprint. So at some point, you can actually burn yourself out by doing too many one-to-ones. And I talk about a BNI member in the book, Networking is a Marathon, who did too many one-to-ones and burned themselves out. So at some point, rein it back in, because it's a marathon. Don't burn yourself out.
I think that's a good point,
Early
too.
in the process, that's great. That's absolutely outstanding, because now you're getting to know people really quickly. All right, I got 2 more minutes, I think, so I'll take last question. What's that?
Oh, Mary wants to say that.
I'll give the mic. Last question.
Thank you. Dr. Ivan, I'm sorry. Shakina Tellis, BNI Charlotte Achievers. My question relates to your books. I know you have many. Like you said, you have 32 and more, because I know you mentioned there was another one that you were working on. What book for you was the most difficult to write?
The one I'm working on right now.
And what makes it difficult?
Well, Garage to Global, it covers 40 years of knowledge, and we're already at 100,000 words, and most of my books are 50,000 words, and we're not done. It's been a slog, and we had a survey. So it's been about a 3-year process so far in doing this book. That's been the most difficult. The one I really recommend you guys get as a self-help book is Who's in the Room. It's such a great book for the people you surround yourself with. In terms of networking like a pro, that would be a great book for networking. All right, I'm gonna wrap up, and I know Mary wants to get the mic, and I did mention that Mary is fantastic to work with. Oh, yeah. You weren't in the room when I said it, but they'll confirm it. She has been fantastic to work with, and I am so pleased that we have her in this position. I believe that BNI is a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. We live in a crazy world, and yet I see BNI members come together through chaos, through problems, through tragedies, and they're there to support and help each other. We were there to support and help each other through COVID. BNI was one of the few organizations in the world that grew during COVID. Our chapters grew. We had more members because they all surrounded themselves and helped each other be successful. And we really are a beacon of hope in a sea of fear. And it's because of that philosophy of giver's gain. And giver's gain is more than a phrase to me. It's a way of living one's life. It's a perspective to view and interact with the world. It's an attitude, not an expectation. And when it's applied properly, it'll change your life. And when it changes enough lives, it'll change the world. I thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to introduce our CEO, Gary Kennedy Thompson, and